Right now, from the beginning of history, is the best time for you to educate your child at home. Hi, I'm Christine and welcome to the channel. This week we're going to talk about the problems of a child-centred education. And schools nowadays talk about a child-centred education as if this is the best thing. But we've got 5 problems with a child-centred education. And before we even look at these problems, this brings up an important question, which is, which child is at the centre? The reason I say that is because all children are different. They've each got their own needs. They've each got their own strengths and weaknesses. How can we possibly barrel up all children as if they are a single unit and say they're at the centre of education? That can't happen. There will always be competition for that central point. So the question again is, which child is at the centre of a child-centred education? Okay, well, moving on from that, what happens when a child is at the centre of education? Well, what happens is that there are things that are sacrificed to this because they're not central. That we can look at different things that are competing for being at the centre of education, and if the child is at the centre, then ultimately education isn't. And what do children go to school for? What is the purpose of school? It's to educate them, or at least it should be to educate them. Educate them in various subjects. Reading, obviously, is primary. Maths to various degrees. Then you've got other subjects, history, local history, history of your nation. You've got geography, the geography of your nation, world geography, and then just how to live life. What makes people tick? A general education is what we expect. We expect a child to leave school with a reasonable general knowledge, with a reasonable idea of history, perhaps world history, local history, and so on. But if the child is at the centre of education, then education can't be. And again, because we don't know which child, and each child has different needs, we don't actually know then what is at the centre, and that keeps moving. What else is sacrificed? Well, truth is sacrificed. Some people might consider truth to be an important aspect of education and an important aspect of life. And philosophers from the beginning of time have asked the question, what is truth? And these questions cannot be central to education if the child is there in the centre. Another thing that is sacrificed is discipline. Now, I don't necessarily just mean children being chastised for bad behaviour. I mean things like that children are being disciplined in certain ways of behaviour, that they're learning. Part of education is discipline. We're learning what is the right way to do something, what is the right way to walk along a corridor, what is the right way to address an adult, what is the right way to use a knife and fork. Obviously, some of these things, even if the child is in school for a full 13 years, some of these things are learnt at home, but they can be reinforced in school. And if the child doesn't like discipline, if the child doesn't like education, or truth for that matter, these have to be sacrificed to the child, because the child is at the centre. And I would argue that on the back of that, the fact that education, truth, and discipline are secondary to the child itself, that ultimately what we're also sacrificing is the child's future. If the child is not fully educated, if the child doesn't understand concepts of truth, if the child is not properly disciplined. And again, I don't necessarily mean, I'm not necessarily talking about being chastised, but rather as in discipleship, being discipled in good manners, having that discipline, being even self-disciplined. These are important things that adults need. And I would argue that I've talked before about I'm thinking I would argue that these are important things for the future, not only of the child, but of our nation. And one final thing that is sacrificed to the central point of education is the staff. And obviously, I think most teachers would say that staff are not the most important things in the school, and they might name some of these other things. However, if you go into a public building or a post office or a shop, there are often notices up that say, our staff don't come to work to be abused, and there'll be a warning about how to talk to members of staff in that particular place of work. That is not the case in schools. There is no limit to how badly staff can be treated. And in many schools, even although there are police in schools, such a thing did not exist when I was in school. I don't know about you, but the idea of having to have police in school to me is completely alien. But there are police in schools now, and even those police don't want to deal with things like abuse, verbal and physical, either against staff or other children. They don't want to criminalise children by charging them with crimes like assault. And so the staff are horribly demoralised, because they're coming in, they're working hard, they've prepared lessons, they want the children to succeed, and they're not able to do their jobs. So they're horribly demoralised. And if you think about that in wider terms, what does that mean for the morale of a school? What does that mean for the morale of your child going into school? It's not a good situation at all. And that is why we at TrueEd would advocate for you to educate your child at home. So thanks very much for watching. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much. See you next week.